Hello, and welcome to Coffee Time. Coffee Time is a space where magical humans come together for some real talk, strong coffee, and powerful introspections on whatever is top of mind right now. My name is Natalie, and I am your host for this channel and today's super exciting conversation. The idea behind Coffee Time is that you are in your favorite coffee shop, maybe cozied up with a book, and you begin to listen in on an intriguing conversation between folks at the next table over. For that reason, there is no big introduction. We absolutely let the conversation speak for itself. And if you do want to know more about these special guests following today's episode, I invite you to check out the show notes for more details. So, on that note, let's dive right in. Hi! How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I love that we both, came with our green sweaters. Well, like yesterday, we have like an intranet page for work, and they changed it at the very end of the day, which is funny because no one's really gonna see it, to like light pink and light red. And I saw it was like I messaged my friend who works in marketing. I was like, this is awful. Like, why did they do this? Because it's like, you know what? Now that I know that green is associated with the heart chakra and Valentine's weekend, I'm like, I'm just going to go green. Like, that seems better to me.
I was like, oh, we're recording on camera, so maybe I'll make a bit of an effort because just audio. And then I was going to wear something bright and colourful, and I had this on earlier. It's really comfy. I'm actually wearing a green skirt. I'm like full green today, apart from my red slippers, which you can't see. So I was like, no, I'm just going to wear this. It's cozy, it's cool, and hey, green.
Yeah, it's Bashir. Like I said on the post in the group, I think that's awesome. And it's honestly, this is like my favorite sweater. I bought it last year because I was like, I need comfy sweaters, and I can never really find them where they're like bulky, comfy, still cute, and not uncomfortable because they can be like super itchy or just like, eh. But this one, I live in this one. I will wear it all week if I can.
This is like almost like a velour, kind of really soft. And I saw it. They only had this size. It's a little bit small when I got it, but I was like, I need it in my life. And kind of now it fits okay, and it's so comfy, and it's like,
yep. There's a thing for like oversized cozy sweaters. It's just magic. And I have exciting news that actually will, I think, kind of segue into our topic of the day, which I posted in the group, but was that I got a promotion this week. So that's exciting because, I do the spiritual stuff. I also have a full-time job, and I've been gearing up for a while saying like, hey, we need this kind of a role. And some shuffling happened, and the VP kind of like recognized that need at the same time and approached me, and here we are. So it's really exciting. But it also got announced to my team and management, not yet like the whole company. I mean, not everyone might find out, but like the people who will be impacted and working with me will find out. And it was kind of funny because I mentioned that it got announced to the team to my partner, and their response was like, oh, how was that? Because like I could see myself being really uncomfortable and feeling really weird and being worried that everyone was judging me and thinking I wasn't right for the position. And I was like, yeah, that's actually exactly what went through my head. Like, which was funny because I think when we talked about it, we're like, do other people feel this way? And like, there's many reasons probably that my default is to feel that way. But realizing I do think part of it is coming from that like imposter syndrome as like a first step of like, am I really qualified to do this? And like, well, the answer is somewhat no. And they know that. And that's why I am paired with people who will train me to be fully qualified to do this, because it's stuff I haven't done, but it's stuff I'm capable of. But then that imposter syndrome, and I was kind of thinking this morning on the topic of like childhood bullying and anxieties and all that stuff. And it's like, I feel like some of that is just coming from the state of affairs that is the world, and how we, are kind of taught to put these expectations on ourselves. Like if you're going to do a thing, you have to know it entirely before you do it, and you have to do it perfectly. But I do think some of the other side and being worried about people being told probably does relate back to like, I remember in high school, I switched schools in grade 10 to go to a public school because I had been taking religion courses, And at a certain point, it seemed to just be repeating. And so I asked the teachers, I was like, do we ever learn anything different, or does it just go into more depth of the same stories? And they're like, the latter. So I was like, well, this is a waste of an hour of my day when I plan to go to university to do this other thing. So I switched schools to a public school that had philosophy. Um, I don't think it's like a public school versus private school thing, but the private school definitely, I think, is a bit more like, um, majority of the people there had higher expectations of themselves academically, like just as a general principle. And so when I switched schools, same thing. But I fit in with like the alternative kids. And I actually remember them making fun of me for being good in school. And I stopped trying as hard, which, like, mind you, for me meant I was still getting like decent enough grades. I got into a good university, whatever. I stopped trying so hard, and I stopped like sharing when I did well. Because you'll do an exam, you'll be like, oh, how'd you do? How'd you? And I just like wouldn't talk about it. Um, because I felt like if I did that, like I wouldn't be accepted. And so I don't think it necessarily was like the blatant bullying that we can also talk about, because I've had that happen too. And I've probably been on both ends of that spectrum, to be fully honest with you. But it's those moments, I think, where we're taught that it's not safe to be yourself, right? It's not safe to step forward and share those parts of you. And that's something that I've, in the last 6 months, after, some big changes in my life, have been working, I would say, fairly hard to undo. I mean, it's little steps at a time, but it's a constant focus of mine, is to like let my whole self be seen so that I can see myself finally. Yeah, anyway, I'll leave it there. I could keep rambling, but that's the thing.
Yeah. First thing I have to clarify, British. When you say public school, do you mean like state school? Because
So this was high school. So private school was actually like a Catholic school. So my parents paid for me to go to a private Catholic school. So you have to go through that whole entry process. Public school is just like the regular one where you wear whatever you want. There's no religion attached to it, or at least there shouldn't be. And it's free. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So in the UK, because we're awkward, state school is like what you're calling public school, and private school is what we call public school. Because
it's so weird. I feel like it's like that in other places too. I've heard before. But that goes for like high schools and stuff too, right? Not just college or university.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So public school, yeah, you might have kind of college, which I guess is the end of your high school, because our college is up to 18.
Actually, yeah. Do you even, this is a bit of an aside, but do you even have, because we follow the like British system for universities. Like University of Toronto, for example, is structured like Oxford, I think, where it has different colleges within the university. And you like affiliate yourself with a specific college, and typically different colleges have different programs under them. I mean, you could take the program within any college, but it's more like, okay, well, you're an engineer, you're probably going to go to this one. You're more into like visual arts, you're going to go to this one. But when we talk distinguishing between a college and a university, a college as an institution is more like a trade school, whereas a university is academic. And I know in the States, it's different than that, but I feel like yours is probably comparable to ours.
Mostly, yeah.
Okay.
It's interesting because the college is within university system. I think is quite unique to Oxford and Cambridge.
Yeah.
Then you have like faculties, and then rather than like a college. So the university that I've been to didn't have colleges; they just like were at the university.
Okay, so U of T did, because they copy that system. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So so our college tends to be, so you have kind of school, which a lot of schools will finish at 16. Some will have like a sixth form, which will do the college bit. And college tends to be 16 to 18. But then, yeah, there might be vocational, like the trade kind of stuff there. University tends to be the more academic stuff. So, yeah, if I was doing, I was trained to be a plumber, for example, that would be a college rather than a university.
Yeah, that's pretty comparable to here. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Anyway, we digress. Yeah.
Education systems.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think bullying. It's. I think your point about the kind of subtle peer pressure might also be too strong for it. That kind of expectations, or that holding bits of yourself back to kind of fit in, whether that's something that's been voiced that this is kind of how we do things here, or whether it's just that feeling of, in this space, this is how I have to be in order to feel like I fit in. That has a massive impact, as well as the actual explicit bullying of different types. And workplace bullying is a whole other thing that we could also talk about, because it's something I've experienced as well. And I think it all has an impact, and sometimes you can kind of see part of the impact and you kind of think, oh yeah, that's how it's affected me. But I think there's deeper things that you can then unpick, and you kind of think, oh, where did this come from? And then when you dig, you're like, oh, maybe it's partly from that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what kind of came up when I was reflecting on that moment of it being shared with the team. And of course there was a person who said something, and I kind of figured they would. And I've dealt with comments in the past too. And I think the biggest thing that I realized, though, is like my reaction to it is always to retreat. It's always like, I can't be here anymore. But on the flip side, like when I've dealt with not just bullying, but we'll say like harassment, like in the workplace, there's also that fear to speak up, because it's like, well, you're the odd one out. Like, you're disrupting this whole thing that seems to be working if you weren't here. And so it's interesting how, like, I can then put it on myself that I have to take responsibility for it. Like, that's a bit fucked up, to be honest with you. It's like, people are treating me poorly. And I think I have to adjust to appease them, which is what I did back then, which is what my default is now, and to not say something, to not rock the boat. Yeah. And that's just, it's really sad. Like, especially, and I've been thinking about this a lot as I'm doing like a lot of trauma work, is thinking back on like childhood, and like, no kid should carry that responsibility. Like, that's just too much. But I mean, obviously kids are getting bullied. I got bullied, like you, I think, shared, and feel free to share any of your experience you're comfortable with. But like, it's too much.
Yeah. When I think particularly at school, and so my secondary school, where we lived, there were a few different schools that were kind of within the area. And I think the closest school, my mum was like, absolutely not. You're not going there. They had quite a reputation for being quite rough. And and so, and it's funny, I ended up going, actually all my siblings, we all went to different schools because of different reasons. My school, this might be a very UK thing, it was grant maintained. So it was a specialist school for music. So I auditioned for my place at my school. And got my place because of my 11-year-old musical ability.
No, we have some schools like that. Like, I was never into like performance arts, so I didn't know they existed. But I have a couple of friends in Toronto, at least, who went to a school specifically for that sort of thing, and some of it had to do with like more like playwriting, and people who knew they wanted to go that direction, but also like performance arts. And you would audition, but I don't think the school itself cost money. Like, it was just a special, in our case, public school.
So mine was, it didn't cost any money, but because it technically was outside of my catchment area, so it was further away, so I wouldn't have just got a place normally. But because it was music, and I played a couple of instruments to various like varying levels of competency. So I did like a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and obviously enough to be like, I think I came second out of everyone, so I was top of the waiting list, and I got my place before the school year started. But the downside of that was that I knew hardly anyone at that school. A handful of people from my primary school that went there. And when we were kind of saying, who we knew and whose class we wanted to be in, the people that I put down didn't put me down. So I was then in a class with like lots of new people who knew each other, and I was probably still, I'm quite shy, like socially anxious, and the amount of time is vague, but for about, I say 6 months, it might have been more, might have been less, I was like a selective mute. I like didn't really talk to anyone. I was like so quiet, and I had a few friends to start with in my tutor group, but then it just sort of switched, and so I didn't really have any friends in my class, and there were people who said mean things. There was never any like physical bullying, but it was of the more kind of social exclusion type bullying, that just not being included. And one of the things that kind of sticks with me, and I don't know why I made this choice that I'm going to tell you about, but I did. So it's my birthday, as you know, is in the summer. Birthday buddies. Birthday is in the summer, and so I was having a party, and this was after like the first year of school. And even though I wasn't really friends at all with the people in my class, I don't know whether I was like, oh, it's like an olive branch or something, I'll invite my class, which was a foolish idea because we weren't friends. And so none of them came. Only one of them kind of phoned to say like not coming. And so luckily, at like the last minute, someone I knew from school but was in a different class, I invited her. And so it was just me and her, and we watched like Scream and like the Blair Witch Project and all this stuff, like twice.
Yeah.
And had a sleepover. It was fine. But it was that I don't know why I invited people that I just wasn't friends with. And like looking back on that, well, why did I do that? But it was just that, not even to be like, oh, we're not coming, it was that being completely excluded from that kind of social arena. And so I had some friends in other classes, and most of the time that was fine, but then occasionally it'd be like, it's raining, and so you'd be like, well, I've got no one to talk to. I hung out in the library a lot. So I love books, so that was fine. But I think that sometimes when we talk about bullying, we talk about the kind of more abusive bullying, whether it's physical or verbal. But I think that being excluded, that has a really big impact as well. Of that, of, well, why am I not good enough? Why am I not, or do I have to be a certain way to fit in? What is it about me that is just not right for this group, or not likable, or all of those kind of things? And I think you internalize them quite deeply. But I think sometimes, because it's not the more explicit bullying, sometimes you can kind of minimize it, of like, well, it wasn't like a big deal because I didn't get beaten up, or I didn't get like really cool names, that kind of thing. So you kind of minimize that experience and the impact.
No, absolutely. And I think the birthday thing, like maybe it's because we share a birthday, I don't know, but because we have the exact same birthday, don't we?
No, it's a couple of days out, actually.
Yeah. When's
days out?
yours again?
9th of August.
Okay, yes. I'm the 13th. Okay, yeah. But we have a lot of other similarities in that realm. Like, it's interesting. I was talking about this with someone recently too. Like, even having birthdays as an adult, like I don't do it. I spend them alone and that's a choice now. But I definitely think it stems from that pressure, right? Like when we would have these parties, or like I remember my parents, and like nothing bad about this, but like, like planning my birthday, and I would like go to the pool and I would invite these people, and this might stem back more to me than how these people treated me, but I never felt like them coming was genuine. Like I always kind of did feel like I was on the outside. And so then when there were the circumstances that actually articulated that, right, it just kind of reinforced those feelings I built up about myself. And I pushed away from people even more. But I think like for me, at least, like a lot of it was more internal to start with, and then it kind of built up. But yeah, like even now I don't plan things. I mean, COVID, but I don't plan things for my birthday. I think because it's easier to be alone than deal with the disappointment of if people don't show up or people can't come, and it's not a big thing. Like I remember a couple of years ago was the last time I bothered to like plan something for myself. And sorry, I'm trying to fix my camera. And it was it ended up being like really, really fun. There was someone who came and actually brought me a gift. Like, I think you've seen my Fox mug. It says, "Wherever you are, be all there" on the inside. And it's like so perfect for me. This person, I had met her like once at a show, and we bonded and became friends on Facebook, and then kept running into each other at different events and things. But we were never like close friends. We had never really even hung out. She showed up and brought me a gift. And I was like, whoa, okay. On the other end of the spectrum, about 5 or 6 people who had said they were coming just didn't plan accordingly and didn't make it. And so I'm sitting at this table where we'd reserve spots for, 9 or 10 people, and there's 5 of us there. and 5-ish, yeah. And it was super fun. Like the group of us were there for 4 or 5 hours, like laughing hysterically and like didn't want to leave, and it was wonderful. But the thing is, when I think back on it, like I can't not think about those empty seats and the people who just didn't make that little bit of effort to either confirm or whatever. And I think it's difficult because you get, like, on the topic of birthdays, you get like so excited. There's this expectation of what these birthdays should look like.
Yeah.
And then when it doesn't happen, and maybe for people like us who have a history of being on the outside or having, people put us there intentionally, it's like, what did I do? Why don't these people want to be here for me? Which is funny because if people know that if they invite me to their birthday, I'm probably saying I'm not going. However, I always RSVP, and they know this of me, so it's not like it's a thing. But yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that. It's just kind of an observation.
Yeah, but no, I think it's true. And I remember it was probably a couple of years after that childhood birthday one, and I had a party where I had friends over, and my stepmom made a load of Indian food, but we still had to go to the Chinese takeaway because some people didn't like it and whatever. But I actually had friends there who were like real friends, but it was weird because it was like, oh, people actually, want to hang out with me. And as an adult, I don't tend to do massive things. It tends to be like we're going to go for food. And like my birthday last year was a weird one because like COVID time, but we went out for a meal and it was me and my partner and one friend came. But it was nice, and it was like we couldn't have like massive stuff anyway. And actually, she bought me such a lovely gift that she'd handmade. She's made me some fab gifts actually. It was a bag, and it's got this holographic Marvel thing like on it that she
Very
made.
you.
Yeah, and she bought me a gift previous year, which was a Groot that she then hand painted. Yeah, so she's
Awesome.
I've got 2 mugs of coffee because I just brewed some and it was too much to like. So this mug she got me, nerd.
Perfect. I think I need it.
Yeah, there's a story behind that. Actually, both of these mugs were gifts. This was from another friend. But that I had a student who was selective mute and wouldn't talk, and we used the iPad. She would type and it would talk, and when you put the smiley face, this one is like a nerdy face with buck teeth and horn rimmed glasses. And because I wore glasses like that, this student found it hilarious. Yeah, my glasses now. But it actually got her talking because she just called me nerd, and I was like, that's progress. And so my friend who worked there as well, she got me the nerd on my birthday. But I think as an adult, I guess I don't feel like I have a huge amount of friends. I see a lot of people that I know from when I was younger who it seems so easy to make friends and to connect. And I played roller derby for a while, which is a team sport, and I found it so like how are these people going on holiday together? Like how does that happen? But I don't have a huge amount of friends, I don't feel, but I have some really amazing close friends, and so I feel really lucky for that. And so now actually as an adult, usually I can see some of them kind of near or around, and often I think the gifts, sometimes I get gifts, sometimes I don't, but they tend to be kind of personalized and special. I have one of my closest friends who I went traveling with. We've got like an in thing. So we went traveling and we went to Peru. That was the first place we went. We spent 5 weeks in Peru. Everything has got like llamas and alpacas on, and they are very fashionable at the moment. So that is like an instant gift.
Yeah.
Actually, she got me this for Christmas. Like
oh, that's cute. Yeah.
And it's just like, but it's that kind of like we've got an in thing. And I guess when I was younger, that was just not a thing. I just didn't feel that connected people. I felt quite isolated from the school stuff, but also that impact of not feeling good enough and not feeling likable when family stuff as well. but I think that with people that you'd like to be friends with, or with that peer group not being accepted, we're a pack animal, aren't we? We're a social creature, and I think when you feel that rejection, it's so hard not to internalize it. I think it must be something about me. There's something about me that I don't fit in, so I have to change myself to fit in. And I think yeah, that I feel really blessed now as an adult to have a few people that I can be like, I feel like I can be myself and yeah, feel accepted and supported. And yeah.
Yeah, a couple things from that are coming up. One is like, I think I always was the person I pay attention, and even like, I mean, friends know, now partner has noticed very quickly. Like if I give you a gift, it is very intentional and well thought out. Like I won't just give a gift to give a gift. And it's going to be like, there's a sequence in which you need to order it or open it, and it tells a story, and it's like, it's a whole plan. And I think I've always been that way. It's just, I never felt it given back to me the same. Which is interesting because like my love language, at least as of now, because I want to get the actual book and like read through it all, but it's gifts and acts of service. And it's interesting because there are people in my life who do just throw money. Like they'll just throw gifts at you. And that's how they think they're showing that they care and that they're supporting you. But I'm trying to fix this thing. But like all I want is an intentional conversation, you know? But I think that's because for me, for a gift to fulfill that, it needs to be more intentional and like personal. It's not just any gift I get is going to fill that thing for me and make me feel loved. I think at times gifts can actually feel really dismissive and like a way of avoiding further connection. And maybe as like an empath, I pick up on that really, really quickly. Because it just doesn't feel genuine. It needs to be genuine. And then, oh, what was the other thing from there? That was the one thing that I thought of. Oh my God, my brain. I think this is on the flip side of that is, or kind of stemming from it maybe, is like, I'm realizing now too, that I love big, and I am working on letting myself show up for that, but it's hard because, I also know some fairly recent past instances where I mistook like trauma bonding for love, or, you know, my anxious attachment for love. And, you know, it's not that there wasn't love there, but it wasn't like the genuine, grounded kind of love. Like my mentor, my current mentor said to me recently that, oh, what was it? The most conditional love is the kind without boundaries. And I kind of feel that way about people who just throw money as gifts, like the people in my life who are like that. It's like that's not genuine, because then you'll go and do this thing that destroys me emotionally and not even pay attention to it. And that's not okay. And so really, yeah, just kind of trying to let myself love as big as I do, but where it is true. And that's a big shift that I'm trying to kind of figure out as I go, because it's new for me. And then the other thing you mentioned about like people pushing away and everything, like some of my bullying that happened to me, and now I should also preface this by saying I have been a bully. I ironically, maybe, no, probably a mirror for myself. Remember in elementary school, I wrote a letter to this girl basically telling her how fake she was and that no one liked it, and saw it as like, and this is not going to make me look good, and I know that. But I saw it at the time in my weird way as being like an act of service to her, because I was trying to be like, just be yourself. Like people will like you, but you're hiding yourself from people, which was funny because I didn't know who the fuck I was. I was 13. I felt like no one liked me. So that's where I say it's probably really a mirror for what I was going through. And her and I like made up later, and I've apologized, but I don't think I have forgiven myself for what I did. I think part of me wishes she didn't forgive me. Because it's like, I think probably because I want to be like better in the situation, to be honest with you. Because if she doesn't forgive me, then it's like that weird, like, I don't know how you would like self-deprecation kind of thing, like feeding into it. It's like, yeah, I did this shitty thing, like be mad at me. And she's like, it's okay. We were kids. I forgot it even happened. And I'm like, how did you forget that even happened? This is like 18 years later, no, like 14 years later or something. And I'm still holding on to it. You know what I mean? I don't know.
I wonder if there's some weird, I'm going to psychoanalyze you now.
Do it.
So whether there's some weird, when you've got that whole thing of not fitting or not feeling you matter, that if she remembers it and is mad, then even though you did something that you're not happy with in yourself, not comfortable with, you matter and you had an impact. So maybe there's some kind of perverse thing. If she's angry, you mattered. Whereas if she forgot, then
yeah. The world didn't revolve around Natalie. Go figure. Right? No, but it's true. It's a weird switch that way where and I think that probably stems more from like my codependency, which is also a result of all this childhood stuff, right? Where it's like, even if I matter in a not attractive way, I need to be important. Because that's how I build my worth. It's like, if people don't need me, then who am I? And that's not true. People will want me even if they don't need me, right? But it's that weird, but I think that comes from like us, it's part of it at least, being on the outsides of these situations and not feeling like we have a place. And it's like, well, if this is a place I can fill, let me fill it. But there was another friend, and I'll tell the story because it's something that I've also been carrying with me a long time. And we were really, really close, like really close. We were inseparable at school. It was to the point where like I had decided I was going to leave my Catholic school, and she was literally like holding on to me as I walked down the hallway, like dragging her feet so that I wouldn't go. And like we hung out 24/7, best friends. I switched to public school, and it quickly became apparent to people that I was interested in women. And pretty much the timing worked that as soon as that got out, this other person stopped talking to me. And I have not, that's one of the situations. And I don't know if there was a causal relation. But I think too, because a lot of the bullying I did go through, and more of like the physical stuff, like having things thrown at me and names and things at school, happened as a result of that, like being interested in women, being open. And but it happened in all the ways. Like I came out, I was like, hey, lesbian here, because back then, it wasn't even that long ago, but back then there wasn't an in between. There weren't these other more fluid labels. You either were all in or you weren't. And so I was, and then I got this community, but everyone else pushed away. And I think that's a common trend for me as I've gone through life, is like Catholic upbringing didn't quite fit, pushed away. Then, hey, I'm a lesbian, straight community, pushed away. Then realize at a certain point, oh, wait, I am interested in guys. Okay. And then because of that, I had no place in the lesbian community anymore. And there wasn't really a queer community at the time. There wasn't a place for that. And so I was constantly being othered and having to really, in a sense, embrace that otherness. But I don't think I embraced it. I think I just threw myself into it as the only place I knew how to be. But it wasn't like a genuine stepping into it. It was like a fear response, right? And it was more defensive than honestly being myself. But all of that kind of reinforced that same feeling of like, you don't belong. And it definitely had me questioning that friendship of like, well, did you even really like me? Because you threw me away as soon as you found out this other thing about me. And I think that feeds into that longer term. Like if we were talking, how does this childhood stuff impact you as an adult? That feeds into now showing up as my whole self in interactions, and being able to share like, hey, I still do like women, or, whatever it might be. And even with like my health stuff, being able to show up and share openly about that. And some of the parts that are harder for me to accept. It's scary to do it. And I think because also I build up these stories inside about how those things do make me a burden or less than or undesirable. And those are not easy scripts to rewrite.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. It's think about like childhood, and it's not really, really early childhood, but it's still pretty early childhood. And that's stuff that runs deep and has a massive impact. And so unpicking it all, and figuring it out, it's like an onion, like the classic onion. You come out, unpeel a bit, and like, oh yeah, sorted now. I've dealt with it. And then like there's more. And I don't know if this is just me. But I find, this is something I still work at, and I still am better, but still not great at, of really, really caring what people think of me. And I try not to, but, and to the point that it used to be in social situations that I would be so hyper vigilant of what's going on and so analyzing like how people will respond to me, what people might say, that I'm not like actually there. I'm not actually attracting. I'm just such in that fear of who am I supposed to be? How am I supposed to interact? What am I supposed to do? That and then you kind of have that, well, if I'm not showing up as me, then how can they even really like me? Because they don't even know who I am. So it's like that kind of double thing that you're trying to be someone or trying to think who you need to be accepted and to fit in. But at the same time, there's the underlying, I'm not being me. So would they really like me if I was? And also, how do I even be me? How do I do that?
That's a loaded question. No, but it's true, because it's like the first thing I think of too is like, well, there's also the part where it's like you don't want to dump all your stuff on someone the second you meet them. Like, and that's not to say you're hiding things. It's just that's not how you get to know someone. And then my like socially awkward analytic self, possibly, well, I don't think that's true. Anyway, goes to like, okay, so how long does it really take to know if you're friends with someone? Because like there's gonna be a time frame on which you start to divulge information and figure out like, are you cool with this? Do we relate on this? Do we not? And there's this dance. But it's like, how long does that dance go until you decide that you can be like longer term dance partners? You know?
I think as a kid, you can be like, are we friends? Are we not friends? That kind of thing. But as an adult, and I had this a couple of years ago, I was doing a course and it was like a counseling training course. So it's like a weird space anyway, because you're kind of like fellow students, but also not quite. And it's like a weird space. And there's someone I got on with really well. And towards the end, I'm like, I just asked, it's like, are we friends? Can we like be friends outside of this space? Because I don't know. So I'm just going to ask. She's like, yeah. But it was, we we don't do that as an adult. Saying, are we friends? Are we not friends? Like,
Yeah.
What's this relationship between us about?
It's kind of funny. We leave things very ambiguous, don't we? And we're like, we're scared to show up for those feelings. And I mean, I'm including myself in this. Is why I'm saying we. And like, I know I have a friend right now who was talking about like her partner and they haven't had like the future talk. And not to say you need to have a very definite future talk, but I think it's important to know like, do our personal trajectories even line up at all, right? Like, if you're at a point where you want to find someone who will eventually cohabitate with you and like go through life, assuming things go in that direction and things keep going well and blah, 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 like assume the premise, you need to know, because that person might not want that at all. And these are people who are a bit older and they're like post first marriage and like they have kids and, whatever. So it's like, dude might not want to ever live with someone again. Have you asked him? And they're scared to do it, which is interesting, because then I feel like I can be scared to have the conversation, but then I am constantly obsessing over whether or not those things will match up and whether or not I fit into this person's future, and whether it's friendship or romantic, like it still can come up about like what this looks like. And it's like, well, why not just exactly like have the conversation? And it's not to be like, maybe like, so like, do you want to marry me? Like, I don't think it needs to be like that, but just hey, like, what's your vision for the next 5 years for the things because some things are not determined and that's fine. And like with a friend, it's I think that can sometimes be even just like being clear about your expectations for communication. And I think most of my good friends kind of know that I'm not an everyday talking kind of person. If you text me, I'll respond in 10 seconds or I'll respond in a week. And like, that's pretty standard for me. But that also takes more explicit communication. Like, I'm grateful that my friends have been open to that. Like, my one friend, Renita, who's been on a couple of episodes, when we plan a hangout, we will like plan the time we're meeting up. We'll talk about roughly what we want to do. but she and I both will communicate like, just a heads up, I have something at this time, so I've budgeted 2 hours for this. And it's like very clear. And I appreciate that because it helps me know what the agreement is, right? I think there's like that idea of like consent and like, how can you consent to an interaction without the information? You can't. And I think the same goes for friendships and like how those relationships develop and romantic partnership. Like, how can you consent to the present if you're not really talking about what you're wanting and what your intention is? And it's like, not everything will be determined. That's not a thing. But why be scared to mention it if you know it's what you want?
Yeah, I think, and this is something one, my partner does not plan ahead because, at all, which is like sometimes a bit of a pain, like just like a vague anything, but I think a lot of this is about some of those feelings that we've talked about from bullying and my attachment style and all of that jazz. That for a long time in relationships, particularly romantic relationships, it was, and this is probably all my issues coming into this, it was more about that being, again, what that person wants or about them and about how they see me, and not even really owning like what is important to me, what do I want, and showing up to myself, because it was like more important, like this person likes me, they approve of me, someone loves me, I'm in some way lovable. And actually even knowing to myself like this is important to me, this is what I want, before I could even take that step of communicating and getting that across. And I think that again is one of those impacts that if you've had any kind of experience where you've kind of doubted your worth and whether you're lovable in some way, then almost like this person showed me some attention, so cool, whatever, I'll be whatever because this person wants me. And
No, it totally makes sense. Because it's like, if we've been searching for acceptance, we've been searching for family, we've been searching for love, and we're finally given what feels like a piece of it, it's scary to think that that could go away.
It's like trusting that this person, it's not that there is genuine love there, that I could say this is what's important to me and they wouldn't go, whoa, like that's not okay. I think having that trust in being able to voice it, and I guess maybe if you've had lots of experiences that's left you doubting that.
I feel like that's a theme of like episodes over the last while that's been kind of like, because it's probably in my life, so it makes sense things are going that way, is that like conflict doesn't mean abandonment, because I grew up thinking it did. And I feel like on this topic of like bullying, that's conflict, and that is constantly like all those experiences I shared in like little bits and pieces are showing that a conflict with a person, a conflict with a group of people, a conflict of interests leads to me being on the outside and me being alone. And so when we get in these situations where it's like, I'm finally not alone, trying to understand that, well, yes, a conflict or a disagreement, but I'm using the term conflict for purposes of this, could lead to, okay, this isn't going to work. But there's also the cases where you can have conflict with someone and you can actually move through it and have a good constructive conversation, and like you might not agree on the other side, but like you can be okay and you can still be together in whatever that relationship is. And I think that's a big piece as a grown-up. Apparently I'm a grown-up, of what the bullying and those like oppressive institutions like the Catholic Church that I grew up in have taught me, is that leads to me being alone. But what actually I took this course, and I think you knew about it, back in June-ish. It was a social justice seminar with Dr. T. And the topic of like growing up in something like a church and purity culture and whatever came up one day. And I pointed out, like being on the outside and being alone, but something that he shared, and this isn't word for word, so like anyone who listens to this, like just follow him and like read his stuff because it's amazing, and invest in his courses. But was like, in any area where there is like an oppressive institution that has pushed you out and made you feel alone, there's other people who are alone that way. And so like there's opportunity to build up a community that you can heal within. And I kind of feel like when we find those people where we can have the conflict and start to be okay, right? And like realize like, oh, hey, we had a conflict. This person's not going to like not want to be my friend. Like they're not going to hate me forever or like whatever it is. That's that community. Like that's finding that community that you can heal within. And I think that's really powerful. And it's also really uncomfortable because it's not what I'm used to. Like the thought that I could do something that bothers someone and they call me out on it, but then they also still love me and like want to be there for me and with me and like do the life things. Like that's so counterintuitive to everything I've ever known and taught myself or had taught to me. But it's also very possible. Like it's happening in my life right now. And that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But I don't know how, I don't know. What, do you have any kind of like, not words of wisdom necessarily, but like, has there been any like kind of major turning points you identify for yourself in terms of unpacking these things in adulthood?
Therapy.
Yep.
Helps to kind of go over stuff. But there's actually something that it happened with workplace bullying that, and this, not everyone would be able to do this, but I was being bullied by my boss, and her boss was also, it was a really toxic environment, bullying environment. And I had lots of friends I'd worked with who'd left because of the kind of, and I had been depressed for a while, but it was, but I'd always worked while I was depressed because it was being at home with my own mind was, you know, bad, but actually prayer was really important to me. And that was like a relief or a release or something that made it manageable. But I was actually missing days because of the stress. And I had one day where I was driving and I was just like, I cried as soon as I got there. I was like, I cannot be here. So I had to leave, set some work for my students. I go to the beach and my partner would just stand in the sea and be like, grounded. Yeah. So it's a really not great environment, you know, and my boss was a kind of like demeaning kind of person, kind of verbally abusive to just the team and everything. And in that, my final year there, I made plans to go traveling with my friends. So I knew I've got this, at the end of this year, I am leaving. That knowledge gave me this sense of justice or like moral outrage of this is not okay. And like I knew it wasn't okay, but this is not okay. And actually, I'm leaving anyway. So I'm going to take a stand because like no one else has, and I can handle, I'm already handling this shit anyway. So I can handle more of this shit and actually try and do something about it. And I've never sort of stood up for myself in that way or confronted something. I've always kind of like suppressed how I was feeling. And so making that decision, going through it and feeling like I've actually used my voice, I've made a stand. To be honest, nothing really came from it. But to have done that, for me, was a really powerful thing in demonstrating to myself that I could stand up for what I believed in, stand up for myself, and deal with a little bit of extra heat, you know. And I think that was quite a powerful experience to have been through and go, I can stand up for myself, and you know.
No, I think that's so powerful. And it's actually kind of funny because I think on one of the episodes, I think it was episode 19, Jessie challenged me to basically do that. She's like, the next time someone does something that makes you uncomfortable, don't filter yourself, don't plan it, just respond, just say something. And but that's the thing. It doesn't have to necessarily be like the huge work conflict or the whatever. I mean, granted, your situation allowed you to do that. And I think that's really awesome. It can also be something super simple. Like, I don't know, your partner says something and it doesn't feel right. And you're like, that makes me uncomfortable. And you say it. And you don't even necessarily have to know why, but you say something. And just exercising that muscle, I think, of starting to stand up for ourselves and like honor how we're feeling, and trusting our instinct, because that's huge in those situations, is a really big step. So like, I appreciate you sharing that, because I think it might, like you said, like that specific might not be attainable for everyone, but there's a bit of that can be done in little situations.
Yeah, and I went like full grievance route. I like really went for it. Woo! Yep. And I got a letter being like, oh yeah, sorry, this shouldn't have happened. And then like nothing really happened. But anyway, but I think it's like a muscle, isn't it? That you have to use it. And even with my partner, I find it difficult still to voice things. And I had, this is a really trivial thing, but felt like a big deal to me recently, right? I've got a George Foreman grill and I've been using it, and the plates come off to wash it and whatever. And it's like in the way, we don't have a very big kitchen. He's like putting it on top of the fridge, but he's closing it when the plates aren't in, and I'm concerned that it's going to get damaged, whatever. And it was really irritating me that he was not doing it, but I hadn't told him, obviously. So I just said to him, obviously I hadn't said anything.
Obviously,
just getting annoyed. And so I was like,
we are similar. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, by the way, when you put it up there, can you just leave it open if the plate? He's like, all right. And then the next time I saw like all the plates up there, where's the George Foreman's up there? And it was open. Magic. He took on board what I said, and it was like no big deal at all. But to me, it was like that saying, can you just do this thing? Felt like such a big thing. It's so trivial, but felt like, and I think that's the thing, that even small things, if you're not used to doing this and saying, this is really important to me, this is something, and then you get that resentment, you get that anger, and you're like, this is such a tiny thing, why am I angry? Because I'm not saying it. And actually it was just like, it was a small thing. I say, please can you do this? He went, all right. He did it, and I was like, oh, that was easy.
Right? Yeah, no, that actually happened to me just before this call, so it's really fitting, I think, that we're kind of wrapping up on this note, which was that someone says something to me, I instantly had a bit of a reaction, and it's coming from a couple different places, but I had to kind of sort out what it was. And I was like, oof, I don't like this. And I just said, like, and I realized, like, okay, no, I need to say something. Now's not the time because I'm jumping on this recording. But I kind of said, like, hey, can we talk about this tonight? And they're like, sure. And they probably know that something's up, and that's fine. But I also know with this person, because we've had conversations like this before, that like I can feel safe. I can talk about it. My feelings will be listened to and understood, and getting to that point, right, where we can, I think the pause is still important sometimes, but not filtering to help the other person feel better. Like, we can be polite about it. We can be gentle, but that doesn't mean dismissing part of our reaction and how we're feeling. And like, good Lord, that's a big shift from the growing up Natalie who was, getting firecrackers thrown at her head. So, yeah, right. Yeah. So I think that's awesome. I think it's great you said something, and it's also pretty great that your partner made the change.
Yeah. Well, he said something the other day, and I think he was trying to be positive, but it came across as like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't sound bad. So, and I just said something like, when you say that, I know you're trying to be positive. The way I hear it is this. And he was like, oh, because it wasn't like you're being negative or whatever. It is making it about my reaction to it.
Yep.
Which again is a big change. And I think it's like, actually, you're saying that, and I think this is what you're meaning. This is what I am hearing.
Yeah.
It's not going in defensive of, on back. It's having that bit of pause, I guess. Yeah. So you're not in the heat of the moment. And you can really articulate, this is what I'm taking from it. This is how it's affecting me.
Yeah.
And I think people are more open to that, because then they don't feel attacked, and then they,
It's amazing what like healthy adult communication can do, isn't it?
Yeah. I feel like, I've been an adult for a little while, but I'm just learning.
I'm just learning it too. Because the other thing is, you need interlocutors, is that the right word, who are also willing to operate in that system. And we're at different points of the journey. And I know, like, the first time I had someone like healthily communicate something to me, I was like, wow, like, look how awesome this is, to like my mentor. And she's like, yeah, that's how it should be, just so you know. And I was like, oh, okay. So the next time I talked to this person, I was like, I really appreciate all this, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, but also, like, you're treating me how I deserve to be treated. So like, I'm not giving you a gold star. And they're like, true. And I was like, thank you. Like, because that's the thing, right? Like, we actually deserve this standard, but we're so used to operating down here that it's like very quickly can be like, oh, look how amazing this person, this friend, this partner, whatever is, they're doing all these things. And sometimes we need that reminder of like, no, you just haven't gotten what you deserved your entire life up until now. This should be the status quo.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a big shift.
Yeah. And, actually, I had, having had some really toxic managers and now being in a place with some good managers recently, and then being like, wow, this is amazing. But actually, I mean, they are great, but also it's a bit like, that is also kind
Yep,
of how it
exactly.
shouldn't just be like, well done, you're a good person, you communicate, you don't bully people.
Yeah.
Rather, it's actually, yeah.
That's who should be in that position. Yeah, no, totally agree. Yeah, I definitely relate on that. I think that I feel like we've covered like a whole spectrum of all the things, and this has been awesome. And it's been lovely chatting with you as always. I feel like it had been a hot minute, so it's really nice to get to see your face
Yeah.
and your green sweater and,
I know.
and
Yeah.
like
So funny.
reflect on everything. Yeah. So thank you so much for taking the time to chat and brewing your coffee and sharing your experiences.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I felt like I had to bring coffee, and now I feel like I've had a lot of coffee today, more coffee than I normally have in a day. But
For a walk. That's what I'm gonna do. It's actually it's actively snowing and I have to go pick up stuff because partner and I are virtually cooking dinner tonight for Valentine's Day. So I'm gonna go get my snow in because I love the snow and probably like cry happy tears and then come home and just be cozy for the day until that happens. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of Coffee Time. Before you leave, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And if today's show resonated, I invite you to drop into the comment section and share whatever personal introspection came up for you today. Anything you can do to help make the show more accessible is super duper appreciated. Until next time, I am your host and coffee drinking companion, Natalie, wishing you a beautifully caffeinated day.